Good morning and welcome to Mecca Live, making engaging community connections accessible here on Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. Today's topic, who has time for self-care? Before we get into our topic, I want to remind that we do have the new days, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Depending upon the nature of the topic, the information we're going to provide, they may be pre-recorded, but they will be posted live at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But we are shooting to make sure that they are live on both days. So I wanted to make that clear because there are some things coming up, right? We have holidays coming. Many of us have different commitments in our community and within our family. So I wanted to make sure that I communicated that with you because there may be times when we have commitments outside of this 10 a.m. Time, and wanted to make sure that even if that's the case, we will still have our information posted at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Mecca Facebook page and the Mecca YouTube. So let's just get right into it. So, who has time for self care? Before we give you the tips and the tools and the way to assess your lifestyle, your current lifestyle, your schedule, and your habits, just to see where you can weave in some things that will rejuvenate you, bring the life and the vitality back to your everyday living. I want to share this really quickly with you. Um, whether it's the current political climate, whether it's having to do with the pandemic, um, our economic status as a country, words are important. And you know that we end each live with speak life. And that's because words have power. And that's because I want to remind you that the things that you say resonate within your own spirit, even if you're not cognizant of it. So remember last week I mentioned that our subconscious has no sense of humor. So we say what we say, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's fact. So with that said, when we're listening to information, when we're reading information, when people are sharing information, whether it's in conversation, social media, on the news, however you secure your different types of information and where you get this information, it's important to continue to think critically. It's important to listen, take in what's being provided, unless you know absolutely that it's a waste of brain cells. And I mean, absolutely not because of your bias. And absolutely not because you don't like what's being said, but because, okay, this has no fact, it's proven, whatever. Okay. But as you are receiving and processing information, obviously, when I grew up, my parents said, consider the source. Obviously, you want to consider the source, but in so doing, don't just completely dismiss because of the source, depending upon the nature of the information being shared. But my point is this. I've noticed over many years, I think it really became overly obvious to me in my 20s. But over the years, I've noticed how words have changed significance because the meanings don't change. We change how we shape the association around words, and we change how we use words. Have you ever heard, someone say something like, I don't think they use that right. Like, I don't think that's right. And you look it up and you're like, oh, shoot, that's not how that word is often used, but that is a definition. How many of us are unaware of the multiple or the multifaceted definitions of some of the words that we use? And the reason why I'm saying that is this. When we think about self-care, I want you to think for a second, what pops in your mind when you hear self-care, right? I asked some people and the majority of the answers were me time. Um, and this was like, wow, like because I didn't want to jeopardize the fidelity of why I was asking the question. I said, okay, I'd like to explore that further, but I'm not at this point because I didn't want to take from the reason why I was asking. But I'm saying that to to preface what I'm about to say. So a lot of people said, well, me time, the stuff you do just for yourself. Okay, but then here comes the disclaimer or the previous qualification: hair, nails, massage, and what was the other one? Hair, nails, massage, and girls' night. Now, out of the people that said those I think only one person said them all together, but out of the people that included one or more of those phrases or those examples, the majority of them were male that responded. That was the okay. So what do you do? Do you have a girls' night? Like I'm trying to be clear, right? You may like I don't want to dismiss that if that's actually part of your answer. But so what comes to mind when you hear self care? When someone says, "Oh, I'm being mindful of my self care," or "This is what I do for self care." When you think about your own self care, with self care, you see it, you hear it, you read it. What pops in your mind? What are the first three things that pop in your mind? It may be an image, it may be an example, it may be a reaction or a feeling. What's the first three things that you experience when you hear or see self care? And stay with that. Um, and the reason why I mention words is because I want to speak to points of reference. If my point of reference is girls' night or pampering, and again, there are many different types of self care. There are many different reasons and reactions and effects of getting my nails done, or getting my hair done, or having a girls' night, or reading, or having different types of priorities so that I'm okay, right? What does it mean for me to be okay? And all these things play into it. And again, I said this last week, my definition of self care and what I include in self care does not have to match yours because you are yourself and I am myself. But points of reference, if my go-to, if the thing that either because of the associations around me or because when someone has mentioned or self-care has come up, these are the things that I see and hear, then there's going to be that. Our brains work like that. Our brains are wired to connect associations. And it could be because that's all of experience, or it could be that whenever someone spoke about self-care, they spoke about these things. And so, without judgment and without being, overly critical of yourself, just being aware of how those images, how those words, and how that association shaped your view or your initial response or reaction to self-care. But the reason why I mention words is because be mindful of the effect that words have when someone says something or a phrase, especially since we're on topic of self-care, and then explore why that is. But understand that perhaps how we've come to view or understand or interpret self-care may not necessarily be the end all be all of the definition, or we may have an incorrect idea of what self-care is. So I want to throw some words out to you, and I want you to consider these words in the framework of self-care: nurture, refuel, replenish, protect, proactive care. That changes a little bit, right? So when you think of those words, what came to mind? When you think of nurture, I asked someone, I said, when you think of nurture, what do you think of? And they said mothers. It's okay. The majority of the answers were mom. Some people said parents, and then some people said like food and maintenance, like bathing and eating and things like that. Okay. Refuel. Everybody said the majority of the answers were between like gas, like going to the gas station, or eating. A couple of people I think said sleeping, but those were the majority of answers. When I say replenish, a lot of people said had comments related to finances. I can put that money back, right? But replenish. Some people spoke to economics, but a lot of people talked about sleep and rest, and then also I think let me read. Hydration. That was another one that was popular. Protect. So now the majority of the answers had something to do with law enforcement, police, parents, things like that. And then proactive care. The majority of the responses I got when I asked what comes to mind when I say proactive care, most of the people talked about health. Most of the people spoke to going to the doctor regularly, right? Eating, having a lifestyle that included activity, physical activity, and also healthy eating. And I was like, any of those sound like self-care to you? I hadn't thought of it like that. So some people do think of it like that and some people don't. My point is not to call people out, but my point is to invite you to look at how you view self-care, look at what the definitions of the words that popped in your mind, if words popped in your mind, what those definitions mean, but then how that impacts you, what your point of reference regarding that, what does that look like? And keeping in mind that when we change, when we implement changes and we implement habits or we change our habits, that and we do that consistently, that ends up becoming a lifestyle or a way of life. And if we're making these changes and they're consistent and they're small, like small changes, if you make these little changes metered by consistency, can be lifestyle changes. That ends up being your whole lifestyle. So way of life is not based upon size, but upon consistency. So once we wrap our minds around that, because a lot of times what I'm finding when I was asking about this very topic, when I would bring it up, um, I was met with, well, I don't have time. Like I don't have time to go and blah. And I'm like, or are there other things that can be included in self care? Keeping in mind that we have busy lifestyles and we have multiple commitments, especially if we're parents or single parents, or we have more than one job, or we have the type of job that extends beyond certain hours, right? So whether it's family or job or whatever the case may be, community commitments and things of that nature, our time is very, very important. And I found that um, currently with the pandemic, many people have taken on more than one job, right? Maybe people have two part-time jobs, but the timing piece, like this idea of time management has now become kind of slippery for some people. And so if they're in that space and you mentioned, self-care, it's like another thing I have to add to my schedule. Whereas other people are like, if I don't put it on my schedule, I'll forget. If putting it on your schedule will keep you from forgetting and will keep you consistent until it becomes second nature, whatever you got to do to make sure that you incorporate aspects of self-care throughout your day, but also throughout the week, it's got to work for you. Those of us who are visual have to see, right? Those of us who are auditory or kinesthetic or tactile, it has to match your personality, it has to match your temperament, it has to be practical, or it's just not going to be consistent. It has to be, you have to look at this logistically. If my thing is walks on the beach and I haven't thought outside of that, how do I do that every day? How do I incorporate that? So we have to think it through in the same ways that we incorporate increasing our water intake, right? Sometimes it's just making sure I have another bottle extra had handy, making sure that I have in case of. That's the proactive piece. And that's why I chose those words. I chose nurture, I chose refuel, I chose replenish, I chose protect, and I chose proactive care because these are things that we do in other relationships. These are key focus points in other parts of our lives that just is like, well, of course, because I'm the mom, or of course, because I'm the supervisor, or of course, because. That's why nurturing, well, yeah, I would classify it as nurture. That's a no-brainer. So our bodies don't need the same, just asking questions. Okay, so when we're looking at how we make these small changes, and the reason why I'm saying small changes, if you have that personality and temperament, if you have a lifestyle currently as far as timing and availability where you can make big changes and stick to them. I mean, and again, like I said a few seconds ago, it has to meet your temperament, your personality, and your availability to make these types of changes. It has to make sense. But the reason why I've been speaking about small changes is because sometimes that's the easiest way to go. And sometimes I can maintain fidelity or commitment or consistency if it's small enough that I can insert it not just throughout the day, but strategically. Or I have multiple things in my toolkit. That's what we're trying to get to. Where if I can't take a walk on the beach, but I'm noticing that I need to find that space. Or if I want to make sure that there are a couple things I do throughout my workday where I can just, whether I need it or not. And when I say need, I'm qualifying it inside this sentence that I find myself losing, I need to regroup. But sometimes it's not like that. Example, I set an alarm at 11:55 and then again at 12 because I was finding that my lunch period started later and later and later and later and later. And this was last year I started this. And I was like, I needed a reminder because I get into things and I just start working and I work 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 because I'm task oriented. Not because I'm a workaholic, but because I'm task oriented. And I have to say, take a breath, back up a little bit, right? And that's what works for me. And it's, wow, I will play it at some point, but not today. It's like a remix of one of the riffs in, I forget which Pirate of the Caribbean, but it has this like funky beat, and it's like, oh yeah, it's not gonna be like this. And that's the other thing. It has to get my attention and be like, okay, it's time to eat. Or even if I take a break, whether I eat or not, stepping away, so that I'm not reaching a saturation point. Because the other part of this is this: a lot of times we remember I said accountability begins at awareness. At the point of awareness begins accountability. So if I'm going about my business, and I'm either focused on the task at hand or I'm in the middle of something, whatever is going to get my attention, if I want it to be positive, and that's just a game I play with myself. I picked that alarm sound because it makes me laugh. It makes me giggle because I automatically see, and I don't even know at what point in the movie this song happens, or movies, because there've been so many. But I automatically picture Johnny Depp with the whole pirate, regalia, and I just giggle. I'm like, oh, time to eat, right? So it has to match your temperament. It has to be something you're going to respond to, and nobody needs to know. But people hear it, and they're like, what is that? And it's still there. And I don't, I'm in a different working environment, and I can stop. And usually I plan that. This is an example. I wasn't planning on sharing this as an example, but since I'm on it, it's a great example. That's what I did when I was behind the desk. Now I'm not, but I left it because who knows? Why stop it? It's working. But that was a small thing that I did. Plugged it into my phone. It says the music starts and it says it's 11:55 because I could program it to say something. I was like, oh, what? So then it goes off again because then I'm thinking, okay, I have 5 minutes. I can wrap this up. That's my transition. When I was when I just got my master's degree in social work, the job that I had where I was doing my internship became a full-time position, but a lot of the students I worked with were diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And one of the things that we did with them, one of the behavioral modifications that we did with them was transitions. The research showed that with the right transitions, our students will be able to transition from one activity to the next. But if they're going, oh, now we have to do this, and there's no cushion time, there's no transition, there's no, hey, remember, this is coming next. Remember, this is coming next. And when we start doing different things toward that end, it was harder for them to transition if we didn't build that in. And that was based on research. So I'm sharing that now because when I did that, I gave myself 5 minutes. Okay, whatever you're doing, you have 5 minutes to wrap it up. If you can't wrap it up in 5 minutes, stop now because it's going to be 12 in 5 minutes, right? My point is, it took me probably a couple of minutes to pick the ringtone that I wanted for that alarm, and then setting it less than 30 seconds. But what was the longer acting result of that? Now, when I schedule my appointments, there's nothing scheduled between 12 and 1. And when I made that alarm, when I put that in, because I was like, I'm not eating, like, oh my gosh, or I'm eating as I'm doing, and that's not okay. That's not okay. If you spend a little bit of time looking at digestion and the environment around eating, you'll understand how so many different digestive disorders arrive. And I had made a decision when I was getting my bachelor's in social work, because that's when it came. I was like, oh, is that why I'm like that when I eat? Is that why? Yes. And it spoke about eating without a lot of tension and calm and getting everything together and sitting and what that does for the body when we're okay. So that was part of it as well. But my point for saying that is this. That's why I don't want to walk around and eat, and I don't want to be eating on the go, because the digestive process. No, I'm going to take care of that. So building that in, but with the longer reaching goal that ended up being a lifestyle change was from 12 to 1. Now, again, when I set that, I only had a 30-minute lunch break. So imagine I'm 5, 10, 15 minutes in, and now I only have 15 minutes left to eat. That's if I brought food. Okay. So 12 to 1, I don't have anything scheduled when I make my plans. And it began with that small behavioral change. But let's get back into what that really means. So listening to your body. Those of you who participate in sports or physical activities, Mr. LaRue, I see you. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. And he's a runner, so I'm sure this will resonate with him. When you are engaging in physical activity, and you're like, oh, that didn't feel so good, listen to your body. If you have begun a new medication, and I don't like the way that felt, or whoa, that worked faster than the last time. Listen to your body. And when I say listen to your body, I mean listen. Take note. And here's where the awareness comes in, because with awareness comes accountability. If I'm noticing that I have pain here, 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 or if I'm noticing that when I do this, when I stretch, or when I incorporate this yoga into my lifestyle and my guided meditation, and I take this time to just get centered and grounded and prepare my mind for what I have to do for the day, I find that I start off in a better attitude. I have a positive, I have this positive energy, and my mood is different. Okay, that works. Let's keep doing that. Oh, I can do it in the chair. I can do chair yoga. I can do like a 2 or 3 minute meditation. I can just sit and find my calm. I can do that throughout the day. Okay. Not your thing, not in your bag. What is, right? But listen, because we react far more than we're aware of if we're not paying attention. Somebody may say something, or somebody say something, I like that, right? I'm being mindful of how this interaction impacts me. How did that feel? What was my initial response? What popped in my mind? What are those associations, and how are my points of reference being challenged or evolving? Listen, because your body will tell you everything that you need to know, whether it's pain, discomfort, whether it's relief, release. What is it? What is it? What's your body telling you? Because I mentioned that I started teaching yoga, and I'm so grateful to the Shiva Yoga Shala, because that's where I started doing yoga, and that's where I was able to complete my yoga teacher training. But when I ask people about where do you hold your stress, where in your body do you hold your tension and stress, a lot of people are like, or they'll tell me 1 or 2 places. And then we get into our restorative, or we get into our practice, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that movement, like, it felt great. I didn't realize. Yeah. There are a lot of places that are common places, our backs, our hips, our shoulders, where we hold stress, but that's not the only places where we hold stress. And some people hold stress in areas that we really hold stress there. Awareness, accountability. And the reason why I'm telling you to listen to your body is for these 3 things. Healthy boundaries. I mentioned last week that no was a complete sentence. When we talked about listening to ourselves, it also means making the decision to do so without judgment and with compassion. Because when you start listening to your body, you're like, oh, really, I don't want to stop right now, right? Example, I was working yesterday, and I was typing. I was creating a couple profiles, and I was responding to emails, and my thing went off that I needed to stand up. Like, I'm pointing to my beads there. It went off that I need to stand up. I can't stand up right now. Like, I can't take some steps right now. I have to finish this sentence. The sentence takes a couple of seconds. Finish the sentence. I stood up, walked around, stretched, got a glass of water. Ooh, that's how my water came back in when this thing alerts me. Just saying, there are different ways you can weave stuff in. Okay. Flip side. I can't take steps right now. Why? Now, that was my Fitbit telling me to step. Sometimes my knees tell me. And how do I know? Because I start stretching and they feel funny. Ooh, that's my body telling me we need to move. If I stretch, finish the sentence, and then get up, no harm, no foul. But if I stay there and I don't get up, I'm not listening to my body. And then when I get up and I have to creak around until my knees warm up, hey, we sent the warning signal, right? Listen, and listen with compassion, because your body's going to give you all the warnings you need. What will happen is, hey, we're over here. Hey, we're over here. Oh, you're not listening? Okay. And I'm not saying, I'm not suggesting that my knees have an attitude. I'm just saying that my knees try to tell me you need to move around. You need to stretch. You need to stand up. You need to take some steps. We've been in one position far too long. And now we need to move around. But what tends to happen? I have issues with my joints. If we don't move around circulation, I can go further and further and further. And I'm not just speaking physically, emotionally. Listen, I'm having a reaction. Hold on, give me a minute. Let me process this. I don't even know why I feel the way I feel. But the only person that is responsible for the proactive care of my four dimensions, and four dimensions that I'm mentioning today, let me just be clear about that. So, my physical being, my emotional being, my mental being, and my really didn't pop up in the comments, my spiritual being. So I'm responsible for making sure that I am taking care of all four of those dimensions. That's my responsibility. That may mean I have to walk away from this conversation for a second. That may mean, I'm sorry, let me call you right back. I have to address something. It may mean that. But if I am not important enough to myself, I'm not going to make time for myself. And that's why I said last week, when you hear me time, like a lot of people say, oh, that's so selfish. You take time for yourself. Oh, really? Because I take the car to the shop. It's how me time has been associated with things that may look selfish, right? And then sometimes it appears selfish because we don't really understand what that means. But let's get back to these words and these three things. So healthy boundaries, making sure that you are able to be honest with yourself and you're able to say, okay, when this happens, I tend to go down the rabbit hole. And I'll use the example of my alarm. If I don't, if I'm not strategic, then I'm strategic. If I'm not strategic and I'm not deliberate, then I'm going to miss these windows. And so, how can I put myself in a position where I'm less likely to miss the window? Example: I don't need the alarm anymore. I just leave it. I don't need it because I've structured my schedule and my day as such that nothing is ever in that time. And I'm demonstrative about it. Can we meet? 12 o'clock's not going to work for me. Can we meet at 1? I haven't told you why. You don't know why it is. It could be anything. I set my schedule now. So when I tell you I'm not available at 12, I'm not available. That, what I just said, may not work for you. That may not be something that you can do because of your work schedule or where you are, whatever. But I'm saying when we decide, because I made a decision, I'm going to eat at lunchtime. But at the bare minimum, I'm not going to be involved in anything at lunch except during this time, except for I'm stepping away from everything. That's where I may listen to my audiobook. I may listen to music. I may listen to anything. I may go outside. I may actually eat lunch. I may, whatever that is, but that's a break. That gives my mind time to step away from the recalibrate, take a rest, get back into it. And when I say from 12 to 1 now, But if I want to bring something in at 12:30, because I've decided that 12 to 1 is only going to be assigned by me. And if I say that I can do something from 12:30 to 1 o'clock, then that means I've taken into consideration that it's not going to encroach on these different aspects. What does that mean? That means that if I'm going to allow anything between 12 and 1, it's going to be something that I'm passionate about. It's going to be something that is not going to take more than 30 minutes to address. It's going to be something that I can buy into, but that's not going to carry over into what I need to do right at the 1 o'clock mark. If so, I need to schedule it for a different time. Why? Because Nzinga knows Nzinga well enough to know that there's certain topics, there's certain points of focus that I can really get into. I can really get wrapped up and I can, and lose my focus for what is scheduled for 1, 2, and 3, which is my business. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So those boundaries, I have to know what is important to me. I have to know what my body, mind, spirit, and heart need. And when I say heart just now, I meant emotion. So I want to be clear about that. There are certain things I can't watch because I know the impact it has on me. That's a boundary. That's self-care. When I say I'm not going to go on Facebook, the first 3 days of the election, that's self-care. If I say that I'm going to, every time I stand up, I'm going to do 3 squats. And you see how I can incorporate something into my activities of daily living that fulfill self-care, but then they have these tentacles and fingers and intersect with physical care or mental health care. You see what I'm saying? That's where we are able to incorporate these things, and it doesn't end up being, I don't have time for it. Because a lot of times when I've asked people, they're like, when I think of self-care and I start to get like, I don't think I can do that. People think of taking time off to go someplace, whether it's a vacation or whether it's, and it doesn't have to be that, right? When we're talking with, when I was working with people with anger management, it was like, okay, what are the things that are going to keep you from getting frustrated in the way that leads you to becoming angry? And again, like last week, I said, get a couple of things, no less than 3 things that you can do at any place, at any time, without any props, right? Because obviously, if you can walk outside, I'm using mine for an example. I love being outside. When I go outside, things make sense. I remember working in one facility, and let me count. From my desk, I had to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 locked doors to get outside. And I made sure I did it when I needed to, because just being outside was, but you understand that? That's 7 barriers. And the nature of where I worked required the 7 barriers. Like, I'm not knocking the barriers, but my point is, I knew that. I knew the steps I needed to take to get from my desk to outside with the employee picnic table, just to watch the trees. Breath of fresh air. And then come back in. All right. Sometimes it was 5 minutes, sometimes it was 15 minutes. If it was 15 minutes, that was my break. But if it was 5 minutes, you can move around the building, within 5 minutes and come back. But those were boundaries that I needed to set. I needed to do that honestly and without judgment and with compassion with myself. And that meant that I needed to spend some time with myself and understand the effect that certain things had on me so that I could build the proper boundaries, right? And I'll be honest with you, my current position with self-care, because I've dialed it up many notches, but the significant turning point was me really embracing no. That's when I started looking across the board at how I take care of myself and how I protect my time and my professional integrity. That's how it started. It started with me saying, you know what, I'm spreading myself too thin. Everything that's in front of me is important, but none of it is going to get done if I start this and then I start this and I start this. That's not how my time management works anyway. But when I'm working on something and someone comes, can you do X, Y, and Z? Priority, this is an emergency. Is this something I can do later? Can I finish what I'm doing right now? Do I need to stop? They made sure the information being presented, it goes through this litmus, and then I make my decision. But at one point, I had to say no to someone because they wanted me to do something right then and there that wasn't a priority in the sense of what I was doing right then. What I was doing right then was required by several governing bodies that needed to be completed within a certain time frame. You're asking me to do something that is just as important, but on the priority list of turnaround time, a couple of steps after this. So I can do that for you. I'm going to need to either do it after this or tomorrow morning. I can have it for you. That was unacceptable. How is that unacceptable? Do you need it right now? No. Is this time sensitive? No. I'm telling you I can give it to you tomorrow morning at the latest. That's not acceptable because you want me to stop what I'm doing right now to do it. That's not going to work for me. And that's not an attitude. That's not being uppity. That's time management. And that is self-care, because if I'm taking care of myself, then the time management, and it was kind of an easy switch practically because the time management skills were already there. But when I applied it to myself, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not a good social worker. Oh my gosh, people are going to think that, all the and I'm just going to be transparent, all the typical microaggressions are going to come up. I'm going to have an attitude. I'm going to be insubordinate. I'm going to be uppity. I'm going to be, okay. Because when I leave work, there are 2 whole lives that depend upon me. And it didn't make a lot of sense for me to be expected that I would not take supreme care of my person. I'm going to spend all this attention to my profession, but my body, I'm not. My mind, I'm not. My spirit, my emotion, I'm not going to do that. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't do that with my car. It's time for maintenance, and then don't touch the tires. You don't need to. No, I'll check the air next time. Just do the oil. Don't look at the filters. Don't check the fluids for the brakes. And the thing that is interesting to me is that we have all these systems in place when it comes to our cars. We have all these systems in place when it comes to our materials. We things that we have to take in for maintenance and regular care. Our phones update. You're due for an update. So what do we have to do? We have to make sure we're connected to Wi-Fi and make sure the phone is plugged in. How many of us were like, why come my phone didn't update? Oh, I didn't plug it in. It wasn't connected to the what source? The power source. Why is our self-care, our mind, our body, our spirit, our emotions less significant, less important than the regular maintenance of our cell phone? So boundaries, setting healthy boundaries for ourselves and others. Being protective of your time, making sure that you're able to restore and replenish and regenerate. So being protective. So we set our boundaries, and then how do we protect them? Last week I talked about the guardrail on the guardrail. Oh, that didn't sound right. The guardrail as you're driving, especially on the highway, or if you're on roads that have like a little like overpass, not overpass, but you go this little waterway. Sometimes they'll have like a higher one. But we talked about the fact that guardrail is not the only thing there. Generally, there's a guardrail, and there's some space and a line, and then some other, so there's some steps in between generally, unless you're on a curb or whatever the case may be. But generally, the guardrail is not the only barrier between you on that section of the road and whatever lies beyond, right? So we set the boundaries, and then we protect them with these different types of fortification. And that example would be me. The boundary I wanted to keep was that at 12 o'clock, I would take my 30-minute break. Whether I ate or not, stop, move around, right? And so the protection that I put in place was the alarm that 5 minutes ahead of time. Because I know me well enough to know that within 5 minutes, I should be able to get myself to a stop point, either finish, but if I've just started something and now it's getting close to time for lunch, then that gives me 5 minutes to get to a stopping point so that when I come back, I can just pick up, right? And then the third one is assistance. Assistance helps with balance. It balances the load when we ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help. And some of us have lived lives or been in situations where we had to do everything. If we didn't do it, it didn't get done, right? But getting in, and then I'll say this. I was thinking about not saying it, but it's the truth for so many of us that we've been burned. We've been burned when we have done group projects, right? Or when me doing my job or you doing your job properly and effectively is contingent upon someone else doing their part, right? If I'm in a relay race, I can't just take off running. I have to wait for the person to hand me the baton. So I'm waiting. I'm in a holding pattern. And what does that mean when you are task oriented? For me, I become anxious. I want to get it done and not get it done so it's over with. I don't like it, give me your part so I can do my part, and then we can go on to the next thing, right? So asking for assistance, asking for help is not, it's a good thing. It helps balance the load, but it also facilitates collaboration. I'm speaking generally here because sometimes sometimes it's not a good deal, but generally speaking, it facilitates collaboration. It gives you a break and it lightens the load. Right. So it's easier for both people if, we have this mutual or collective responsibility or participation. Right. But my point of saying the thing about having to wait for other people so that you can do your job, sometimes that's why, or complete the task. It doesn't necessarily have to be employment related. But sometimes that's why some of us are in positions where I'll do it. I want it done right. I want it done fast. I'll do it instead of asking for help. Sometimes it could be that we've asked for help and it it didn't materialize, or the help was so such that we're like, I'm good. I don't want to take that chance asking for help. So what do? The same thing I did with my alarm. You don't ask anybody for help. You do your due diligence in who's the best person or the best people, depending upon what the help is there an agency that you would utilize, whatever the case may be, making sure that the assistance that you're seeking is best suited for the thing that you need, but then also, what kind of track record do you have with this assistance or this person that you're going to ask for help. So setting healthy boundaries, guard and protecting those boundaries, and asking for assistance when needed. We talked last week about setting practical goals, or making sure that it's logical, and we look at the logistics and the time frames and things like that, so it doesn't end up being a burden or a hardship, because a lot of times that's how people stop going to the gym and they stop working out, because I'm going to go to the gym every morning. You're not a morning person? If you're not a morning person, then you have to have some motivation and some discipline to get up every morning to go to the gym. Otherwise, you've set yourself up for failure. Or I'm going to do cardio every time I go, and you hate cardio, and you didn't take the time to figure out of all the cardio, which one is the one you're most inclined to do. So if it's not practical, it's not going to get done. Doesn't make sense, it's not going to happen, right? And unfortunately, if there's not, without discipline and proper motivation, we're not going to eat our vegetables. We're not going to do the cardio because we don't like it. Some of us will do it and get it over with because we know we need it. That's where the maturity and the discipline comes in. But my point is, these small changes that we can make. If this is look at the change you want to make, and then how can we do that in pieces? If my overall goal is to read more, my overall goal is to become healthier. Okay, that's a big one, right? What does that look like if I'm healthier, right? My healthiest me, what does that look like? Practically. Because if I can say a whole bunch of things that are never going to happen at age 50. I can get close to it, but there's some things I could put on that list that's just not practical. So now I've set myself up. But if I look at what that health picture of me at 50 looks like, or if I look at, I want to read more. Okay, what does more mean? Let's qualify that. Does it mean I read a chapter of something a night? Does it mean, or day, sorry. Does it mean that I read a book a month? And then how do you do that? And make sure that it's practical and tangible, because anything can be reached. We don't get to Chicago from Florida. I'm in Florida right now. I can't get to Chicago from Florida just by saying, I'm going to go to Chicago. Boom, I'm there. No. Am I going to fly? Am I going to drive? How am I going to get there? When am I going to go? What do I need to pack? See, it's the same thing. And if you're taking this journey towards your true self or your inner self seriously, you will look at how you plan for trips. You will look at how you maintenance and maintain your car and your vehicle. Like, why would it be any different? And maybe that's where we start. We start with doing things the way we would for our equipment or for other people. There's a quote / verse that says, love thy neighbor. What's the rest of it? As you love yourself. If the point of reference, see, going back to the first part, the point of reference to that quote / verse is that the love that I have for myself, I extend to my neighbor. If I don't love myself, is it going to be artificial? Is it going to be like halfway? My neighbor will still benefit if I treat them with dignity and respect. But if I'm not taking myself seriously, how seriously am I taking my neighbor? And it's not to say that I'm not taking my neighbor seriously. But my point for bringing that up is, so often things are not relevant until we are impacted by it, or it comes across our eye line. If I talk to you about different social issues and you've never experienced it or seen it, it'd be like, okay. But when it happens to your relative or someone that is close to you or important to you, then it's real, right? And I have to believe that that is in part the impetus behind that quote / verse. Love thy neighbor as I love myself, as you love yourself. I want you to love yourself. That's the starting point, right? Because when I do, I will treat others differently. And I don't mean, and that's why I'm saying, I said that, I built that into this this live because I wanted to be clear that self-care is not selfish. People can make it selfish, but on its own, it's not selfish. Loving myself is not selfish because what happens when I do that properly, when I care for myself properly, my kids benefit. It's an extension of different things. There are certain premiums that go down if I'm taking care of myself. If I don't have any nonsense on my driving record, my insurance goes down. You see how that works? Because I found that if I talk to people, I share information as it relates to their pockets and wallets, sometimes it clicks. I'm the same way. Oh wait, my premium goes down if I'm not participating in these kind of destructive behaviors, or my driving record is X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So there's the motivation to the discipline I already had. See the connection? So start practical, making sure that the steps that you take toward that big goal are practical and meet your schedule and the activities of daily living. I don't mean that we're a slave to the schedule. I just mean that the reality is we have stuff we got to do. Making sure that we don't come second in that. And it may mean some challenges and changes, right? So if you're not a morning person, you may need to get up 5-10 minutes earlier as opposed to an hour early. And if your goal, which was my goal, because I'm not a morning person, but I get up early because I get so much done, right? And I should say I'm not a morning person. I'm not a wake up person. It takes me a minute to wake up. I have 3 different alarms that go off. One is to say, if you get up now, maximizing some stuff. The second one is, you still got a little bit of time. The last one is, if you don't get up now. And understanding that last one is not like brush your teeth and put your makeup on as you leave the house. No, the last one is you have time to get ready, but you don't have time to sit and read or watch the news or whatever. Yeah. So that's how I did that. So if you have your overall picture and then look at that picture for whatever it is, if it's health, mental health, physical health, spiritual health, and emotional health, what does that look like? And how can you build toward that? What are the little pieces that make up that picture, that image that you can put in place throughout the day, every day? Thinking, speaking, and acting with intention means that you spend time really looking at it. So again, it's going to be hard for you to put practical aspects of self-care woven in between throughout your day and throughout the weeks and months and years if you don't spend time with yourself and understand how things impact and resonate with you so that you can take care of yourself. So that's going to take some time. And let me be disclaimer, spoiler alert, as you continue this journey and you start digging and looking and seeing, you going in is at least inside the context of this live, you're going in to see how things resonate and impact you so that you know how to set your self-care up, right? And that's your intention for this, in the context of this live. But I want to be clear that when you do this, you're going to discover some other stuff. You're going to see some parts of you that are not cute. You're going to come across things you thought you had forgotten about, that you thought was over. With compassion and non-judgment, continue to do this work. Because in so doing, when you stumble across these things that, I forgot that was there. Or I thought I was over that. Or, I wasn't thinking, that's not cute. That's not cute. You can weave that into your self-care as well. Okay, I don't like this part about this. I don't like that I found this. This is not attractive. What kind of things can I put in place? How can I make steps to remove that from not just something I need to pay attention to, like the self-care, but so that it doesn't further impact my character or my integrity or my physical, mental, spiritual, or emotional health. And that's how it ends up being this whole collective kind of intersection of becoming the better you, right? And a lot of times for us, it starts with self-care. So I'm gonna give you some examples. Reading, since I mentioned it earlier, going outside, because that's one of my things. Move around. Like if you have a Fitbit or don't have a Fitbit, listen to your needs. Or just say, at the start of every hour or 3 times a day when I'm at work, I'm gonna, whatever the case may be. So move around, eat something that's nutrient packed, like a healthy snack, or pay more attention to what you're putting in your body, right? If you're going to say, I want to change my eating habits, but if I change them all at once, I'm going to lose my mind, I'm going to binge, then pick one thing and reduce that. Reduce your sugar intake, or if you drink a soda every day, have a soda every other day. Like these small things, right? talk to people that are on the same, either on the same journey or are along, where you share the same mindset, right? If they're headed toward positive growth, and those are the people you want to talk to. But I mean, when you get into these spaces where it's hard for you to stay focused, or it's hard for you to continue to put your self care as a priority, then those are the people that you want to reach out to, and just talk to people that give you life. Like, I have a close group that I don't necessarily have to be going through something to reach out, but that's my support, right? And it doesn't matter what it is, that's my support. Built in a meditation or breathing kind of routine. And obviously, I'm going to promote yoga because it was a life changer for me. It's a game changer for me. But I will start with breathing, right? Keep a gratitude journal. This one's mine. And take naps. Like, these are, and if everything on that list you're like, no, 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 then come up with your own list. These are things that I came up with based upon the information that I received from the people that I spoke with as I prepped for this live. But a former supervisor gave me this journal for Christmas. And I was like, wow, that's really pretty. And I was already, I journal anyway. So I was like, well, I want to use it. It's so pretty, but I already have one going. So I made this my gratitude journal. And there's nothing in it but thanks. So I have the date, the time, and it's just all the things that I'm thankful for. That's it. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I'll be transparent with you. I don't write in it every day. I try to. When I'm on my A game, then I'm writing it in it daily, but I put it to where I can see it, be like, oh, let me, and it doesn't matter how big or small the thing is. Something happens with my spirit when I write down things that I'm grateful for. When I focus on gratitude, my whole mood and my whole affect changes. But when I write it down, it becomes real. And I'm a kinesthetic learner, but the tactile piece kind of overlaps, right? So I didn't really understand what that meant until I was in college. And I'm taking these notes and I'm looking, and the teacher's saying stuff that makes a lot of sense. And I was like, I can remember that. And then I wouldn't remember. I think I was in my either sophomore going into junior year or junior year. See how far along it was before it clicked for me? If I'm writing it, and that's where I fell in love with graph paper, because I found that when I write the information over and over and over again, it sticks. So when I journal, specifically in my gratitude journal, then it's like, oh yeah. And so I'm like, I'm gonna write these 3 things down, because that's how it started. It started with me. I'm gonna write 3 things I'm grateful for, so that gratitude is like in the forefront of my mind. And I would start writing those 3 things, and I'm like, I can tell you that if I go through, there's never been a day where it's just 3 things. Even though I started off with 3 things, because it reminds me of this, it makes me think of that. And what did I say about awareness? Accountability. But when we become aware, we start opening up, right? In 2004 or 5, I got a Saturn Vue. And I was like, I don't even see. But when a friend of mine told me about them, I was like, well, that's reasonable, blah, blah, blah. I was thinking, what do they even look like? I got the Vue, I saw them everywhere. Were there more Saturn Vues running around? No. It's just now I'm aware. When I see them, I see them. Before, it's not that I didn't see them, I just didn't resonate, right? That's how the gratitude journal works, at least for me. So those are things that are helpful that we can do. I want to say a couple more things before I wrap it up. 2 things. I already mentioned the cell phone as an example. I already mentioned our cars as examples of how we generally, because there are people that don't take care of their cars as well. But generally speaking, we have maintenance that happens periodically. We have oil changes that happen at certain amount of miles and a certain amount of months, whichever one comes first. And then we have these recommended timeframes to rotate tires and to do different things. To do what? To extend the life of your car. To make sure that your car is operating optimally, but to extend the life of your car. What am I doing to extend the life of my liver? My kidneys, my brain, my heart, my gallbladder, my pancreas. I could keep going. What am I doing? Joints. So for those of you who are athletes, how about this self-care? Build in a routine that's specifically for your joints, just your joints. That's it. Joints and connective tissue. That's it. So we're not focused on reps, we're not focused on weight. I mean, as far as making sure that it's for joints and, the goal is not how much you lift or how many. The goal is taking care of your joints and your connective tissue. Okay. When I was a family therapist many years ago, I would get one of two plants for the parents. It would either be a Dieffenbachia, and that's the plant. Some of you are like, what did she say? It's, you see them there. A lot of times they're often in the artificial plant aisle, but the real plant has these big, beautiful green leaves, and looks like someone took their fingers in some yellow paint and went blick it on the leaves. But it's a plant that grows really tall. They are hard to kill. Hard to kill. If you have animals, don't let them near them, because I think the idea behind the name Dieffenbachia or Dieffenbachia is that when they chew them, the leaves, I don't think they get sick, but it does something with the vocal cords. And someone told me, because they had a cat, and they were like, the cat was like, what's going on there? So, but it's a beautiful plant. The other one was African violet. I would get them and ask them to take care of this plant. And while you're changing the dirt, because I get small, so then they had to repot it. And I want you to think about one thing about your kid. And it was in the context of why they were coming to see me. But my point was, the idea was taking care of a plant. If you don't water it, and I specifically picked two that are hard to kill. If you don't water, you overwater it. And we had, there was symbolism with the water. Watering was communication, and, the soil was, we had associations with that. But my point was that it was something they had to take care of. They had to be mindful of where they put it. They had to be mindful to repot it, and they had to do research on what's the best type of soil. They had to do that. That was on them. And they had to tell me what they did. If you can take care of a plant, because if you neglect it, what happens? It's the same thing with our bodies. It's the same thing with our minds. It's the same thing with our spirit, and the same thing with our emotions. We have to rejuvenate. We have to refuel. We have to rest, right? All those things are crucial. If we cared about our plants the way we care about ourselves, some of you be like, plants are looking good, and so am I. Plants are feeling good, and so am I. Absolutely. But what could you do differently? Can we do better? Or is there something we can add to it? Maybe we got the whole plant physical self-care on lock. How am I feeding my spirit? How am I taking care of my emotions? How am I dealing with my mental health? Because we can always continue to improve. We can always continue to evolve, right? If we take care of our cars the way we take care of ourselves, some of us will have no brakes because we don't know when to say no, when to stop. Yeah. So I think I've exasperated that point. So figure out if there's a way to build in one small thing starting today. Today's Tuesday, that you can do from today until Friday. What would it be? What would it be? And when I say small, I mean something that requires 5 minutes or less, or something that you can do anywhere legally. No, I'm playing. That you can do without, like if you're at work or if you're outside or whatever. That's going to add to your quality of life. That's going to have a positive impact in bringing down your stress level, wherever your stress level is. That's where I would like us to begin and to focus. So as I wrap up, I want to tell you about Thursday. Our topic on Thursday, November 12th, same place, same time, is time management, money management, relationships. What all three have in common. That's what we're going to talk about. What they all have in common. Time management, money management, and relationships, what they all have in common. That will be our topic for Thursday, November 12th, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, you have at home work, something 5 minutes or less that you can do to improve the quality of your life from today until Friday. And if you like it, keep going. If you're like, oh, that didn't work, keep digging, because you're worth it. All right, I'll see you Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be kind to yourself that you may be kind to others. And as always, speak life. See you soon.